Fred, thank you for coming to Power by Snowflake, and congratulations on winning the Startup Challenge with Maxa.
Thanks for having me, and thank you very much. We're very excited about this.
Yes, and I'm very excited to see the demo that you have prepared for us. But before we go into demo mode, tell me more about what Maxa is.
Absolutely. So Maxa is a financial data platform. We built Maxa for CFOs and finance team in minds. Our founders, Alexei and Raphael Steinman, they're two brothers. They decided to combine their entrepreneurial and business experiences and solve one of the business problems that they've been seeing in enterprises for decades, which is to reinvent the way that ERP insights are made and consumed by CFOs, chief financial officers, and their teams.
Yes, so we're thinking about ERPs, we're thinking about CFOs, and we're building a product around it powered by Snowflake. And that's the demo that we're going to watch now.
Absolutely. So today's demos is all about native apps on Snowflake.
Yes, because this is interesting not only for CFOs and people that are going to use the product, but for anyone building with Snowflake. We get to see one of the first native apps available in the platform.
At Maxa, we consider Snowflake to be an application platform now, so we're able to build applications from top to bottom, beginning to end, by using this amazing framework. So today's demos are all about native apps. But before we get there, we're going to take a look at our reference architecture to understand what we're doing from a technical perspective.
Excellent. Let's see that architecture.
All right. So what you're seeing here is the flow of what Maxa does. So what we do is that we take data from ERP systems. Some companies have one, but some companies have many different ERP systems. They have operational systems as well. They have Excel spreadsheets. So we take all this data together. We bring this onto Snowflake. Most of our customers are not on Snowflake. Think of small to medium-sized businesses. So we help them to do that data movement by using a feature that is actually today outside of Snowflake that we call Maxa Connect. When data is in Snowflake, again, think of all the ERPs, top of mind, SAP, Oracle, and so on. Once data is in Snowflake, we're going to translate this data onto a unified data model that has all the KPIs and metrics pre-built, so that CFOs can then use the tool of their choice to be able to look at this from any type of perspective.
Cool. So yeah, I can see this, like you have all of the sources and you are translating to a unified way of understanding companies.
Exactly. So this is more than your typical semantic data layer. What we're actually doing is translating from usually an extremely large number of tables. Most ERP systems have hundreds, if not thousands of tables, very convoluted, very complicated to understand. And again, they're not built for users to run queries directly on them. So once it's been translated with Maxa, you get a handful of tables, usually a very small numbers, with all the metrics and KPIs that are pre-calculated. Then we're able to provide industry standard dashboards to the customers that don't want to do the visualizations themselves. But customers can very easily use the tool of their choice and then query these metrics directly if they want to.
Excellent. And can you show me this in action?
Absolutely.
Let's go.
So for the first demo that we're going to look at, imagine a customer in the manufacturing and services industry. That customer, the financial team, they're looking at their ERP data and they see that there's a lot of uninvoiced order, which creates kind of a cash flow problem for them. They have a feeling that this comes from the intersection of departments and tools, but they don't necessarily understand where the problem is coming from. So their first thought is, let's move that data to Snowflake and let's try to figure it out. But this only solves a portion of the problem. It's more complicated than this. If you look at my screen, we'll assume that the customer has moved all the ERP data onto Snowflake. And as you can see, there's dozens of different tables in there. They're very complicated to understand. So for a financial team to understand where to start from, very complicated. And the type of skills that you need are actually very complex. You need technical people to be able to map these tables together, and you need business people to understand in which table should they look to try to find the problem. So what we do at Maxa is that we're able to translate this onto a very simple data model. In this example, we already have installed Maxa as a Snowflake native application. So what we're able to do is install our software onto a native app, which then will be installed in the customer's Snowflake environment. So all the code that they need to translate from raw data to ERP insight is self-contained within that native app.
Within a native app.
Exactly.
Cool.
So once a native app has been installed, what you see when you look at the databases, you see a new type of database with that small application icon. So this represents basically the application. You're going to see a bunch of schemas in there, some of which you're familiar with, such as information schema. The first one I want to point to is utils. So what we like about the native app framework is as an application developer, we're able to hide our code, which is our intellectual property, from the consumer. So we decide which code is going to be visible and which code is not going to be visible. So of course, everything that has to do with the translation service is hidden from the customer, but we still want to expose some code to the consumer because they're going to be able to control the Maxa service by using this. So think of the Maxa service as something that will run by using a Snowflake task. So the customer can decide at which frequency the Maxa Translate service will run. But of course, if they want to run manually, if they want to stop the service, if they want to suspend a run, or they want to look at logs, these are the procedures, for example, that we're going to expose to them so that they can, have a better control over what's going on. Once the translation service has run, again, this could run every hour, every day, depending on the customer's requirements, what you get is a data schema, which is really the output of the Maxa Translate service. So as you see, the number of tables has gone down from, we were looking at dozens of tables before. Now we're looking at a very small number of tables, and everything is there for the customer to be able to build either dashboards on their end, right, or run queries directly on the service to query the data. So what you're going to see on top is a few dimension tables that are usually required for people to build dashboards. So think of an account list, a calendar, a chart of accounts, and so on and so on. And then all the metrics and KPIs that I was talking about are simply into standalone tables that we call internally marts. So in the case that is of interest when we're talking about that customer, the customer only needs one table to be able to fetch that information and be able to unlock, like I was talking about, all these invoices that are blocked and to fix that cash flow problem. So in this example, we provided an industry standard dashboard made by Power BI to the customer. But again, what I want to emphasize, what is interesting is that the customer can actually fetch that data by using the tool of their choice. Of course, because we're in Snowflake, I can change the filter on my dashboard and my dashboard will refresh from the information that is in Snowflake in real time. But if the customer is savvy enough to be able to run queries on their own, or they want to build a dashboard on their own, for example, well, they could use Snowsight or any other type of tool and then simply run queries. Because again, we're not in a complicated and convoluted type of schema. As you can see from my query, I'm only fetching data from a single table. And that single table has everything that the customer needs to be able to resolve that business problem.
Yeah. I love how you're doing the hard job of translating between any of the ERPs and how they model data to this uniform way of understanding what's happening behind the business.
Absolutely.
That's super cool. And it's all part of this native app. And you also have a public listing on the Snowflake marketplace that people can try. What is this about?
So as I explained, we started with private listings because we wanted to move some customers from a managed application onto native applications, but we still wanted any customer to experience a glimpse of what Maxa is able to do. So we decided to create a public listing, which is available to all AWS customers on the marketplace. And I'm going to show you exactly the procedure to get it, to install it, and then we're going to look at what the public listing looks like.
Let's see it.
All right. So any customer, again, on AWS is able to go to the marketplace. So we know the marketplace for data listings, but now the marketplace is able to show us applications as well. Wow. So I can simply search for Maxa. Then I see the results. There we are. So we have this free ERP sales data assessment native application. So what we wanted to do is showcase the features of Maxa, especially around dashboarding. So we want to show that with Streamlit, which has been integrated now with Snowflake, we're able to actually create visually stunning dashboards that the customer are able to use in their companies.
Yeah. And you already have preloaded sample data for anyone to play with.
Exactly, because we understand that some customers don't have the required data set. So of course, what we wanted to do is be able to provide a sample data set. What is great is that this is using data sharing behind the scenes, so the consumer is not paying for that data. This is on the Maxa side.
That's the Snowflake way.
Exactly. So once I'm happy with the listing, I can look at what the listing does. I even have a link to external facing documentation if I want to understand a bit better what this is about. Once I'm satisfied with this, I simply click on Get, and this will install, again for free, the listing inside of my environment.
Successfully installed.
Exactly. The listing has been already installed. So before we look at what this looks like, I want to go back to the data to see the new data assets that we see when we're looking at the browser in Snowflake. So what you see is a very empty Snowflake environment just to do the test. Again, what you see on the top is a new type of database. You see that little application icon here that will contain a bunch of information. So besides information schema that we know about, you have the UI that's going to be, empty because of the Streamlit asset that we're going to show in a few minutes. But what I want to show first is the Maxa demo schema that contains the data schema that were provided basically with the listing. So what's interesting is that we take a very small type of schema. Our demo or this public listing is really focused around sales data. So what you're going to see is your typical, customers. We can look at data preview to see what this looks like. So a bunch of customers, some products that have been clustered onto categories. And then we're going to focus the most on is on purchase orders. So of course, purchase order will make the link between products and customers.
Cool.
Right?
So we have the data.
We
want to do something interesting with it.
Exactly. So again, what's interesting is that data is provided with the application, which means that the customer could query that data standalone and then combine this data with anything else if this is required by their use case. All right, so let's look at what the application looks like. So to launch the application, I go back in the apps menu and then I can actually launch this. So every application comes with a Streamlit UI that comes by default. So again, for that public listing, we really wanted to focus on dashboarding. So what you're going to see once the app is loaded is how we can create a dashboard by using Streamlit.
Excellent.
All right, Felipe, so now the application has been fully loaded, so we can start to look at what this looks like in more detail. So what you're seeing here is a typical dashboard that a finance team would use in their day-to-day operation. So on top, what we wanted to show is what a CFO would typically look like, which is usually KPIs. And at the bottoms, you have more of charts if you want to drill down and understand a bit better what's going on with that data set. So if we look at KPIs on top, so what's interesting is that we're calculating these KPIs, of course, in real time. This is based on the data set that we provided. And we can also configure them, which means that a CFO that comes in and says, you know what, my year-over-year revenue, I'm more interested to look at this maybe from a quarterly perspective. The periodicity can be changed really simply, and I can change the title to Rev Quarter, for example, apply, and then I can simply apply my changes. So this will refetch the data from Snowflake and then provide the update directly in the dashboard.
And we have, based on all the data that you shared, this app is working now on the Snowflake customer account.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And that this could be their own data instead of the sample data.
Exactly. So in the same fashion, we can look at charts. So again, if the financial team will say, well, I'm looking at my monthly purchasing trend and I would like to make some changes on the way that this is calculated, I could go to change my periodicity from month to quarter, for example. I could filter my dates. So maybe I want to filter by some dates that are not my full data set. And maybe what I want is to filter on a single region. Then I can simply apply my changes, and these changes will be applied directly on my dashboard.
SL is a Canadian state?
I don't think so.
I need to learn my state.
I don't think so.
Cool.
All right. So of course, we wanted to show customers that they're able to map their own data set as well. So if you go in the configuration tab, what we're going to show you now is we're, of course, in demo mode, but what I want to show you is that you're able to map your own database on there as well. So I only have this sample data in my account right now, but if I add other databases, they would show up in this list, and then I would be able to map them and then drive what I'm seeing in the dashboard with my own data. What we can do for the demo is simply add one dimension. So again, our dashboard is really controlled by purchase orders and product. But if I wanted to add a dimension, for example, supplier, what I would do is pick that supplier table in my list. Then what the app would do is ask me to map that table from a column perspective. So what I would find is my supplier ID in my supplier table needs to be matched to my purchase order table. I would find the same supplier ID inside of my list as well. I can then simply apply the configuration. And then what I would do is select the attributes that are of interest to me. I could add some filters, I could change the measures, and then I get to preview exactly what my data looks like.
I love how you built all of this with Streamlit, and now it's part of a Snowflake app.
Exactly. So we wanted to showcase the fact that even dashboards that are made with Power BI, for example, can easily be converted to Streamlit, and the result that you get is actually very interesting.
That was a really cool demo of what Maxa does. So just for people to understand, Maxa is a startup. What does it mean in numbers?
So our magic number currently is 20. This version of Maxa was really started in 2020. We have about 20 customers across various industry. Think manufacturing, transportation, telcos, and MROs. Those customers are generating a few $1 million in ARR. Our team is also of about 20 people. We have employees in Canada, in the US, in UK, and in the Ukraine.
That's super cool. And I find it fascinating how Maxa can work across countries and industries. Now, before joining Maxa, you used to be at Snowflake, and you were a sales engineer giving a lot of demos, and now you are the director of product for Maxa?
Exactly. So let me tell you a bit about my career. So I've been in IT for 23 years. I've had various roles over the years. I was a developer, I was a database administrator, architect, a consultant. And before joining Maxa, I spent 4 years at Snowflake as a senior sales engineer, where I got to help build the Canadian market. One thought that crossed my mind quite a few times over 4 years at Snowflake is, man, it was really fun to actually build applications on top of Snowflake. So last January, I joined Maxa to do exactly that.
Yes, and how is the switch for you mentally from being in sales, as a sales engineer, to being in charge of product?
So as director of product, my role is to build the roadmap and drive the development of the product. Given my Snowflake background, I'm also responsible for the Snowflake platform, which means that I want to make sure that my team is enabled to get the best possible experience out of Snowflake so that we can build an amazing product for our customers.
Yes. And your customers are many of them are Snowflake customers in a market that you grew, at least in Canada.
Exactly. So what I like about what we're doing at Maxa is that we can introduce Snowflake to customers that would not necessarily go to Snowflake on their own. Smaller companies, mid-sized market, sometimes are not data savvy, they don't have a data practice team. Snowflake seems like a big deal to them. So we have 2 versions of Maxa, one that is a fully managed service, which means that we provide a white glove service, end-to-end type of experience where we bring their data to Snowflake and then we provide the insights and the KPIs that I was talking about. But then we have these enterprise customers that are interested in Maxa, but they're not necessarily willing to give up their financial information, which is usually very sensitive. So this is what we like so much about the native app model, is that we're able to bring the power of Maxa directly to the customer's environment. We get to protect our intellectual property, we get all the power of the monetization and the marketplace, and then the customer get full data security, so we don't have access to their data at all.
Yeah, I love how on one hand you understand what your customers want, the CFOs. On the other hand, you understand Snowflake and how it enables you to build the product with the features that they need, including security.
Exactly. So to us, Snowflake is much more than a data warehouse or a database. It's really an end-to-end application platform.
Yes, and as you see Snowflake moving forward and transforming itself, how do you see the future of Maxa around these features?
We're very excited about this year's Summit announcement. As I explained, we do have some features of Maxa that run outside of Snowflake today. We use mainly dbt for our translate service, and our Maxa Connect service is running in VMs in the cloud as well. So with Snowpark Container Services, we'll be able to run these services inside of Snowflake and in the context of a native app, which is amazing. When we're thinking about the future as well, the next frontier for Maxa is all about Gen AI and LLMs. So of course, very excited about the announcement and the NVIDIA partnership that was announced at Summit. We think that it would be amazing for CFOs to be able to ask questions in natural language to their data. So we can imagine that by having LLMs that run directly on Snowflake with models that have been trained with financial information, where the customer sensitive data is protected, is really the way to go.
So that's really cool to see the future. It's container services, Gen AI, a lot is going to change. But let's go back to the Startup Challenge 2023. You were a winner. And now we have a lot of people thinking about participating on the 2024 Startup Challenge. For people that are considering this, do you have any advice?
Sure. So the Startup Challenge has been an amazing experience. It's really a team effort. So we had to build demos, we had to create video footage, we had to show the work environment that we're working in. So I think that companies should participate. It's an amazing experience. If I had to give any advice, make sure that you're building something on top of Snowflake, at least a small demos or something that is working, and make sure that your team is enabled with Snowflake.
Yeah, and it's worth it to build on Snowflake, looking at the whole ecosystem that you were part of building too before joining Maxa.
Absolutely. So when we're looking at our development effort, we found that it's actually much easier to build the way that we did than choosing some other platform.
Yes, and then for people that think about winning the Startup Challenge, what do you think were the top factors that made Maxa the winner this year?
So I think that we really solve a business problem, which is what the judges really related to, is that what we're solving for is something that almost any company can relate to, small, medium, or large. And the fact that we're really building on top of Snowflake, we're all in, we built a native app, we put that native app on the marketplace, but we're also using Snowflake internally. So we have Maxa on Maxa. We're actually using our own Snowflake to drive our financial operations and our business. And we have a Snowflake first approach to solving problems. So when we have an IT problem to solve, we're trying to see if there's a fit for Snowflake, and usually there is one.
Yeah, so solve a real problem, use Snowflake not only for your customers, but for yourself.
Exactly.
And it's so cool that you are on the edge of this. You were one of the launch partners for native apps.
Exactly. So extremely excited about being a large partner for native apps.
So congratulations again for winning the Startup Challenge and inspiring everyone else to participate in it and build on Snowflake. Now, for anyone that wants to learn more about Maxa and bring it to their own companies, where should they go?
Sure, don't hesitate to visit our website, maxa.ai. We also have a LinkedIn page that people can go to.
Yes, and they can try the marketplace listing.
Exactly.
Thank you, Fred, for coming to Powered by Snowflake, and thank you everyone for watching Powered by Snowflake. I will see you soon.